Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Keys of Marinus from Season 1 of Doctor Who, written by Terry Nation and directed by John Gorrie. We're going to do something a bit different this time. We're going to actually look at each episode on its own. So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to watch the episode, and then I'm going to come back here and review the episodes at a time. Now, this is not the only story that does this. This is the first one to do this, but it's not the only time. However, when I get to those stories like The Chase and The Infinity Quest, we're not going to be doing this. Mainly because they feel more like they are complete stories. Because even though the settings are different and they might be looking for the similar thing, they're always got the same villain. So like in The Chase, they're all Daleks. In the Infinity Quest, it's all that pirate guy. But in here, the villain changes depending on the story. So I think it feels more like the individual episodes. I was going to review videos each for each episode. However, A, I don't think we got a lot of time here. And B, it still feels like its own story. So I'm gonna watch the first episode now. Right, so see you in a bit. So episode 1 of the Key of Marinus, the Sea of Death. The Doctor, TARDIS crew, they arrive on this little island. Now, I love the design of this island. There's lots of spikes. They're all like in weird shapes and angles. It reminds me a lot of German Expressionism. And they find this building, but the Doctor decides not to go because he's learned from the Daleks. Hey, so Terry Nation uses a bit of elements that he's used before. However, Susan has to go back to get her shoe because she was going to go on a skinny dip on one of the beaches. However, it turns out the water here is all acid. And the island is surrounded by acid. Now, when she goes to get these shoes from the TARDIS crew, they stay and find these like submarines. So they find out that the planet is habitable. And we get our first look at our villains for episode 1, the Voord. These weird things in these black submarine suits. I think they personally look really cool, and they do look really silly. There's one on the cover up there. They've got these weird pointy head things. They look really silly, but I think they look really cool, in my opinion. In this one, they have no dialogue, which adds to the atmosphere. You see him just silently walking to our heroes, and one of them gets a knife like that, and you just see him getting ready to stab. It's really cool. The Doctor heads back to the TARDIS, but they can't find Susan, and they see footprints that lead to the building. Now, I have a little complaint here. Why did Susan go to the building? It's not like the TARDIS crew went far. I mean, maybe she thought that the Doctor's curiosity would get the better of him, but I think at this point we should know that the Doctor would not do that unless he had all the companions' approval. So yeah, that's just a nitpick. Then, so they go to this building. Susan's at this building, and you see one of the Voords, and he's hiding, and you can see him getting a knife, and then suddenly the bloody wall just takes him like that. And the way he reacts, and he's like, ugh. I personally found it really funny because it's like they were building him up to be this really scary, mysterious villain, and then something's like, ugh, crap. I don't know, I just thought it was really funny. So it takes the Voord, and then later on takes Susan, and Susan's in this building, and she sees this monk. He comes up to around the corridor, just stands there, and then just walks back. Now I thought that was really cool, a very mystery. It's got a very atmosphere, you know. There's a lot of nobody talks that much. This is a very silent episode. There's not a lot of dialogue. So Barbara, Ian, and the Doctor also go to the building, and they hear Susan scream. Well, Ian and Barbara does, so they run around the building, and when they do, they realise that the doctor's also gone missing, because you see him and the building kind of does that to him as well. I love the way he just like absorbs people. And then they're at one of the corners and they're talking, and they're just like, they couldn't have gotten far. And then Barbara's sitting down and it's like, they've probably gone to the TARDIS. Isn't that right, Ian? 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 And then she looks around the corner and Ian's also gone. So there's a lot of moments like that in this episode. So I think this is a very great first episode to the Keys of Marinus story arc. And then obviously Barbara gets kidnapped. Now, she becomes a prisoner along with Susan and the doctor. However, Ian is wandering around a bit in this building, and he finds one of the Voords fighting this monk guy. And so as you can see, the Voord's got the knife and is about to stab him. He grabs him and they start fighting. And Ian sort of like pushes him down a hole, which like apparently sounds like acid at the bottom of it. Now the effect they did of showing the Voord falling is absolutely hilarious. They got like a toy. Actually, it didn't look like a toy. It looked like more like a piece of cardboard shaped as a person, and just like threw it down. And they give it like a right. I don't know. The effect really didn't work, but I thought it was pretty funny. So there's a lot of funny moments in this story, unintentionally so. So then we get to learn what this monk guy is after. It turns out that he's protecting this building, and he saw the doctor and his TARDIS crew come onto the planet, and wasn't sure if they were the Voord. These people who, we get to the Voord now in a bit. So he befriends them and he explains what is happening and why the Voord are after him. Now, I think the way it's set up and the way he tells it is he does a very great job. The actor who plays him might be a little overacting. He does a lot of eyebrow movement. He's doing this a lot. But he does an okay job at getting the explanations out. However, I think the actual idea I thought was really stupid. Let me explain. So what happens is that long time ago on the planet Marinus, which is obviously a planet, they made this machine called the Consciousness of Marinus, which is like this telepathic machine that can judge people on whether they're good or bad. What they've done is they've modified it to the point where it can actually control people and make them good. So it's just a planet of good people, and there was no crime, there were no wars, there was like literally no bad people. However, the Voord came to this planet, and for some reason they were unaffected, and they wanted to take the consciousness and turn it against them and make everyone evil. I think that sounds really stupid, but he does a very good job at explaining it. As I've said before in Dalek, Terry Nation isn't very subtle with his political messages, and here it is quite clear that he doesn't like pacifists. Basically, he thinks, you can tell just by his writing that he thinks that not fighting for yourself is just another word for being a coward. And it really shows in this story. For example, there was pacifists, and that's what made them so acceptable for the Voord. They were like, to the Voord, they were like, this is easy take-ins. We could take over this planet like that, basically. So this guy, what he did is he took the Keys of Marinus. See what his come is. I think there was 5 of them, and hid 4 of them across the planet. Now, he kept one of them to himself, and he asks the doctor and his crew, can they go around the planet? Now this bit, like I said, there's a lot of unintentional funny moments. This is my favourite moment in this bit. Okay, so he basically tells them, help me. And you think, right, these are the heroic, they're all like basically heroes now. The screen then fades to black, cuts back onto the beach. You see Ian and Barbara walk across the beach. They like, we gotta wait. The doctor's taking his time because he's getting older, and they're laughing about it. And then Barbara's like, I'm so sad that we left that old guy behind. Like, we're going to help him. That's fucking hilarious. I mean, what the hell? They had all these adventures, and it's not like they're going to go anywhere else, innit? The doctor can't travel the thing. It's like, why not help this poor sod from these like evil bastards? No, they were just about to bloody abandon him. Oh, that's hilarious. And then, so they get to the TARDIS. However, they can't actually get in the TARDIS. There's like a barrier. And then you hear the old man's voice, the monk man's voice, and he's like, I'm sorry, but you left me to your choice. You either help me, or I leave you on the little island with no food or water. Now, then it cuts back to the building, and they're just talking about setting up the plan. So this bit about them not helping him just goes bloody nowhere. I just realised how hilarious this is. Oh my god. So, yeah, the doctor's like protesting. He's like, how dare you? How dare you? This is pure blackmail. But Ian's like, I'll just give it a rest, Doc. Come on, let's get it over and done with. I love Ian's attitude. He's like, yeah, whatever. Come on, we've already argued about this. Let's just do it. So, and then this guy gives them these like watches, which might be a precursor to the vortex manipulator, where it lets them travel, like teleport throughout the planet, and then they teleport off it. Now this bit I really like. This crew disappear, but then the camera like keeps on to him. Oh, before they go, he says, don't, whatever you do, if you come back and you see the Voord, don't let them have the keys. Just whatever you do, don't let them have access to the consciousness. So the TARDIS team go, and this old man, the camera just keeps on to him, and it's very unusual for Doctor Who. Normally, there's rarely any scenes without the TARDIS crew, and the camera then slowly pans to him holding the consciousness, and you can see he's tired, he's worn out, he's like, I really need, I've got some hope. He puts his head down, and then you just see the shoulder of a Voord come into shot. He comes up behind him, gets a knife, and then just before the guy turns around and sees him, he just stabs him in the bloody back. And it's like, oh my god, there is no hope. So, that's the first episode, The Sea of Death. I thought it was hilarious. It might be funny in bad in a funny way, but I thought it was I thought it was hilarious. Some unintentionally funny moments. So that's episode 1. Let me see what episode 2 is like. Oh. So, episode 2, The Velvet Web. Now this one I thought was really good, which is surprising from after the first episode, which I thought was pretty funny, unintentionally so. This one I thought was actually pretty good, but let me explain. So, in the last episode we saw Barbara go first, and then the rest of the TARDIS crew then follow her, and they couldn't find her, and they think she's behind this big wall. And so they try to get in, and doors open, and there's this massive flash of light, and they can't see. And then when the light goes, it's like a beautiful Romanish building, and they see Barbara, and she's perfectly fine, and she's got this like beautiful Roman dress, and all the servants are like these sort of emotionless, but they do everything they're obeyed to do, and it sets up this like paradise setting, and you see there's a lot of charm between each of the characters in this story, especially with Susan, and she sees these this material, and she asks can she have a material dress in that material? And the doctor thinks that that Susan is being a bit spoiled, but the doctor also asks for equipment, scientific equipment, every science equipment or something like that, and they actually are like, yeah, you can have it in the morning. And they're like, wow, okay, these people seem to have everything. They have no trouble at all. And then they all decide then to go to bed. Now, when they go to bed, the camera like slowly pans up, and the statue's eyes start to glow, and it's really creepy. And the camera then slowly turns to a wall, and the wall comes down, and this woman comes out, and she puts these blocks on each of their heads. But Barbara turns her head, and it falls off, and then she wakes up and she sees the same light as before, but it's like really intense, and she starts screaming, she's certain, and then she kind of like faints. Doof. There you go. It cuts then to the next scene, and Barbara's still sleeping, but the rest of the crew are talking fine. Now this bit, I'm gonna say, is really cool, in my opinion anyway. I thought this was really, really scary. Personally, I'm terrified of stuff like this. I'll get to explain. So, they wake up Barbara because Susan's dress has arrived, and it's beautiful. It's like a proper, like, Romany thing, innit? So they wake her up, and what happens is the camera is from a point, Barbara's point of view. So you got all the TARDIS crew like staring at the camera, especially the doctor in the corner, and it's very shot like very weirdly. And you see Ian like in the front and Barbara thing, but you can see like the background has changed. It's all like dark, like a dark brown. It's obviously not brown, like a dark grey colour, innit? And they're all like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "What? Can't you see it? Everything is wrong." And they're like, "Okay, have a glass." Now, when we saw him before, this glass was like a proper like a fancy like vase kind of thing. The doctor picks up the cup, gives it to Barbara, and it's like a normal like coffee mug. I was like, what the hell? And she knocks it. It's like, poof, it's filthy. But the camera is still in its point of view, POV shot, and all the characters are just staring at her, just going like, what the hell is the matter with her? Especially Doctor in the corner. You could see him judging Barbara, just like, what the hell? And then Susan's like, don't be so grumpy. Look, they made my dress, and you see it, and it's all like dirty rugs, and it's like, ugh. So this whole to do with like mind control, and I thought this was a brilliant idea. It's nice and cheap for a cheap science fiction show in the 1960s, but it also really works. And this whole black and white gives it just really works in my opinion. Like I said, it stays in that POV shot for quite a long bit, and then it cuts to Barbara looking around, and she's like, "Why can't you see it? How can I convince you?" And then one of the servants, this man, comes in. A little bit of the Black Velvet is, the videotape for it is partially damaged. This little bit where this guy walks to Barbara. Now, they fixed it with the computer to fix the damaged videotape. However, it gives this like weird effect where this guy's like staring at her, and his head sort of moves before his neck, and then his body like that, and it only lasts for a few seconds, and you might not notice it when you watch it, but when you notice it, it's really off-putting, and it just builds up this weird, something's not right about everything. And I personally loved it. And then, so Barbara goes on the run from everything, and she finds herself in like a dirty dungeon. They don't know she's there yet. And the servant tells the doctor and his crew that they've taken her to like a hospital, and she'll be fine. So they don't worry about her, and they take the doctor to their lab. Now this bit's a really great scene. The camera first starts like showing them enter the room, and you see their face all like light up, and then the camera takes to what they're looking at, and it's just a wall, a dirty table, and a dirty cup, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And that, it's really funny, but however, it does actually work in the story. I think it was actually intentionally funny as well. I think the documentary on the DVD, they say that this was to A, to be cheap, and B, to be really funny. And there's a bit where they actually pick up the dirty cup, and the doctor's like, this is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. If I had more stuff like this, I could fix the TARDIS to take me anywhere I wanted to. And that's really funny. Can you imagine in modern series, the doctor has to get everywhere because he had a dirty cup, or she has a dirty cup, just going around taking the cup around the TARDIS console. That'd be pretty funny. So, the servant then goes to meet his masters. Now, I know we see the villains, the morphs they're called, in the credits. However, I don't think they're named in the story. And they might look a bit silly. They're these brains with these like slug eyes, and they're in these jars. However, I think it really works, and that voice that goes with it really sets us off as being proper villains. And it's a shame that they were only used for a part of this story arc. I thought they were really good at villains, and this whole idea that they can like mind control people without them like realizing it. And they say that they need to capture Barbara, but the others are so close to full hypnosis that they can basically control them now. And when that happens, it cuts to Barbara, and she's waiting up. She's waiting in the dark dungeon, and they chuck the girl who put the discs on the blocks on their heads. Because she failed them, she gets put in this dungeon. And Barbara sees her, and she grabs her, and it's like, it's you. What's happening? What's going on? And the girl is just staring in the distance, and she's like, I must be punished. I must be punished. I must be punished. And it's really good. Why is it that the second episode of the Keys of Time is so good? Oh, I love it. Later on, she kind of like sorts the hypnotism out a little bit. She still acts kind of like childish. Susan sees that she's wearing something, and she's like, where did you get that? And the girl's like, it's mine. You will not take it from me. The masters tried to take it from me, but they didn't. They couldn't. It's mine, and I want it. And there's just really something about it. It's just really creepy. I just love. I can't express how much I love this concept. So then the male servant comes, and he spots Barbara, and he grabs her, and it's really terrifying. However, the girl knocks him out, douche, and Barbara's like, don't worry, I'll come back for you, and she runs off. And the girl just slowly walks to bed, and just lies down, just in silence. Very moody, very creepy. Just watch the second episode, it's just so good. Barbara then finds this like weird door. She hides behind the wall, and she sees a man come out. She looks around. It's Ian. It's Ian. Our lovable Ian Chesterton. She goes and hugs him, and it's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're safe, and I hope you're okay. And she realizes he's not replying. Pulls him back, and is like, Ian, and Ian's just like, you're the girl that they're looking for. Grabs her arm. I'm gonna take you to them. It's like, oh my God, Ian is possessed. It's like, oh my God. And then Barbara's just like terrified. And they open the door, and they see the morphos, I believe they called it. And Barbara's just like, what the hell, you're idiots. And they explain who they are. Now, I wish they didn't explain who they are, but I guess it is nice that they were these beings who were so smart, their brains outgrew their bodies. However, they still need human like hosts to feed them and to basically do their bidding. So I thought it was kind of creepy. it still works. I just preferred it if they didn't have this explanation. And they just go, they say something like, you're like a nuisance or something, kill her. Barbara then just looks at Ian and just like, without even thinking about it, Ian just puts his neck and grabs her neck. Doesn't even think about it. Just like ah! Oh my god, the betrayal that Barbara must be feeling back there. But then she just fucking knocks his arms out. I mean, I don't know where she got this power. And you hear the morphos are just like, kill her, kill her, kill her. And she starts grabbing science equipment and she starts smashing his science equipment. And then those brains start to get really pissy and they're like, kill her, kill her, kill her. And then she starts smashing the bloody, the equipment that's keeping them alive. I can't remember if she actually breaks the glass. But she breaks the stuff around it. And they're like, and then one of the eyes fall off and they're dead. And you see Ian is just like, whoa, what the hell just happened? That might have been a little bit weak-ended, but I think that's because it's only an episode. This little concept should have been the entire story, or at least an entire story of 4 parts. I thought that was really good, and it would have made a great, fantastic Doctor Who story. On its own, but it's part of the Keys of Time. So that's the Velvet Web. It ends off with the Doctor saying, right, I've got a great idea. You guys look for the other key, and I'm going to find a different key. So Susan goes first, and then the Doctor's like, come on, hurry up, and then Barbara, Ian, and the girl and the guy who is now good because the mind control's gone. I think we'll go teleport her, but then it cuts to Susan and she starts screaming and she can hear these noises and it gets really loud. She's like, stop it, stop it! So, and then that's the cliffhanger for the next episode. So, I'll see you then for part 3. So, episode 3 is the first story which doesn't have the Doctor at all. Behind the scenes, this is because they can give William Hartnell a holiday. So, no Doctor this time. Ian and Barbara meet up with Susan, who is hearing the screams. However, they don't hear anything. And there's the whole, you don't believe me, do you? And stuff. So, already we're in familiar territory, and it's a bit boring, it's a bit bland. This one isn't as interesting as the other episodes. Ian and the 2 new characters, they go looking for a way into a building or something that they've seen. I think it's a building, but they never show like a shot of it. So I don't know if it's just a wall that they find or just something. But anyway, they're in the jungle, and Barbara, now this bit is really, really dull because Barbara's just like, okay, me and Susan will stay here. I'll stay here to look after Susan. And then Ian's like, okay, and don't do anything rash. And then he walks off. And Barbara's like, I wish he doesn't treat me like, smother me all the time, try to look after me. And it's like, you were the one who said to stay with Susan in the first place. That's a Screaming Skulls. Let's just leave it at that. No, I'm joking. Barbara and Susan are talking, and Barbara can see through a patch of jungle that there's this wall with a statue, and it's a really funny looking statue because you can actually see it's clearly human hands just like putting out through the holes of the wall. I thought that was pretty funny, and Susan can feel something grabbing on her leg, and it's like a string of like branch, and she starts screaming her head off, and Barbara then like saves her by like moving it and tries to kill it with a rock, but then she's like, Susan, it's just a branch, it just fell over. So it's like, why did you even try to kill it if you believe that it wasn't alive in the first place? Before Ian comes back, Barbara goes to the statue, and she can see that the key is on top of its head. So she goes and tries and picks it up. But before she can leave, the statue hands grab her, and the wall slowly turns around, and Ian comes, but Barbara gets to throw the key. The wall, she gets stuck in the wall, and they're talking about it, and it's like, right, she might have used the dial to try and get into the next place. So Susan and the other two, you go and go and find the other key, whilst I go and see if Barbara is okay. So they travel, but the girl accidentally drops the key, and Ian says to put it on her necklace. If you remember, I was talking about she had like a necklace and the thing. So she puts it on. She realizes that what she had was actually a Key of Marinus, and this one that Barbara picked up is actually a fake, because they all look identical. But this one of the bits is too small, so this is actually a fake. So which means that Barbara didn't get the key. So Ian's like, okay, you go, and I'll come back with the key. I'll see you later. Okay, so she teleports, and Ian goes up to the statue, and the statue hands grab him, turns to the wall, and he sees another bit of jungle. Hooray! And he walks around, and he sees a statue of like a knight. And he walks around and he steps on something, and the knight moves the knife, what do you call it, an axe. He picks up the axe, and he's about to kill Ian, and then you hear Barbara scream, "Get out of the way!" And then he gets out of the way, doonsh. Very, very Indiana Jones. This is a very Indiana Jones feeling story, which I think is good and bad. We'll get into why. So, as we've seen, they've gotten stuck in another electric, and then they're talking about like, oh, maybe we should be more careful, because these are like lots of booby traps, and they see this giant door, and they're like trying to get into it, and they're knocking, and they can't get in, and Ian finds an axe-ish. Well, he sees a bit of an axe, so he goes to like study it, and he's just looking at it, just like, maybe it's a trap, maybe it's not. But as he's looking there, Barbara is standing by the door, and the door opens. She goes to the door, and a net comes onto her, and the ceiling with like a bunch of knives starts slowly coming down, and she's screaming. So she's trapped again, and Ian's got to save her twice in the same episode. So I think clearly this is the weakest of the three so far. But then Ian goes like, oh Christ. He picks up the axe, and you can see it's on a chain, and he's like, what? He tries to like pull it, and then a fence like comes down, and he's trapped, and you're just screaming. It's like, oh my god, this is actually getting pretty intense. And then the wall stops, and it goes back up, and then some old guy, another monk character, which we've seen the same archetype in the first episode, just has come out, and he's like, this guy's acting is terrible. So bored. He's so clearly bored, and he's like, you proved to me that you worked for the other guy. And she's like, my bracelet will prove it. And he looks, and he's like, I will study it. If you're telling the truth, this will show it. And he walks off. And then this was pretty funny. Ian finally gets out. He uses the axe to like move the fence, and he can get through. And he goes up to Barbara, and he can hear the old guy screaming. It cuts to him, and he's done by the wall, and there's a rope of branch like around his neck. He's like, help me, help me, help me. And he's like, oh, this guy, seriously, this guy clearly ruined the concept of this loner, basically. So Ian and Barbara saved him. However, he gets really ill, and then Barbara just presumes he's dying, and he is actually dying. And Ian is like, where's the other key? And he says these numbers, and he says, be careful when it is dark, the screaming shall start, or something like that. So, and he points to this room, and they're like, okay, this is weird. And then he dies. Hooray! Nobody cared about you anyway. So they go in this room, and can I just say, it's actually really nice to have just an episode mainly focuses on these two. When it's all four of them, it's really nice. But when it's like they separate two of them, you really get the sense of their connection and how they're different from the others. So anyway, they look in the room and they see there's loads of bottles and there's plants everywhere, and there's a safe. And Ian thinks the numbers and letters he said are part of the safe, so he tries it out and it doesn't work. And then they're looking around, they're looking through this box, and this bit's really noisy. I'm screaming at the TV, just like, what the hell? Barbara turns to Ian and is like, what does he mean about the darkness and the screaming? Now, she brings up the point that like it's the same thing as like what Susan was talking about. Like she can hear screaming and all that. And Ian's just like, pretend he's like reading a book. He's just like, I don't know. He's probably rambling. It probably he wasn't making any sense. Ian, everything in this bit is a clue and a trap, and this guy who says that you are basically telling you where the key is, and you don't listen to his last words. I mean, seriously, that is just really frustrating. But anyway, so they look around, and then suddenly you can hear, and you can hear like mumbling and screaming and stuff, and then you can see the plants start breaking through, and then they realise that this guy, he's been experimenting on plants to make them grow faster. However, obviously it turned against him, and all these plants are now trying to kill people. And they're they're fighting off, and they break one of the jars, but then they realise the jars say like letters and numbers, and they figure out that the key must be in one of the jars, and they're looking around. Barbara finds the one with the number, and they get it, and then they teleport. And that's it. Overall, I think it was just a bland episode of the Keys of Marinus. It clearly just there for story-wise, just so they can get the key, which I think was a bit of a shame. So, on to part 4, where we have lovely snow. So, episode 4, The Snows of Terror. I remember when I first watched this, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But, just watching it now for this marathon, I don't think it holds up as well. But let's talk about it. Ian and Barbara find that they're in like this snowy place, but they are saved by this man who is this hairy giant lad who takes them to his cabin. Now, I don't know about you, but all this gave me flashbacks to Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush. I was expecting him to see Barbara in a chicken costume and him chasing him around. So this guy, which I'm going to call Harvey Weinstein, and it's pretty obvious why in a minute, warms Barbara's hands by grabbing it and feeling his fingers, I guess. It's really creepy. I was expecting Barbara to be like #MeToo, like. So he then tells her to do the same to Ian, and she does it to Ian, and he says that he wouldn't have seen them if it wasn't for the fact that before he was with this guy looking for 2 girls, and they figure out that it's the guy they were traveling with, who traveled with Susan and the other girl. So Ian asks, can he have some warm clothing and some equipment? But the guy is like, unless you give me something in return, I'm not going to give you anything. And Ian gives them his watch. So he takes the watch. Barbara stays there and goes off to find them. And Harvey Weinstein looks after Barbara. Now Barbara looks through the wardrobe, not through cupboards and all that, and she sees a bunch of watches, and the chain with the other key, with the other two keys on it, the real one and the fake one. This guy is not to be trusted. He faked, he lied about helping the others. Now Ian finds the guy, I think his name is Altos or something like that, and finds that he is tied up. So they're in trouble. This guy then starts chasing Barbara around the building, and you know, like I said, Harvey Weinstein. It's very uncomfortable to watch. Well, it's a laugh. See her chase around Barbara's like defending herself. It's really anyway. Ian then comes back and basically knocks him, and he says, where have you put the girls? And he says that he's put them in his cave because they were looking for the key. So that basically sets up to the second part of the story. This is the first part was in the caravan, and the second part is in the cave. I thought the first half in the cabin was very reminiscent of silent comedies like The Gold Rush. It's not as silly as that, but the setting and the character of this guy, this loner, this big fat beardy loner, was there. He has a great line where he's like, people used to fear me. I used to break a bear's back with my bare hands. My first thought was it was Brian Blessed, if I must be honest with you. And then the episode goes into the caves where it then cuts to Barbara and the girl who are in the cave, and they go through a tunnel and they go through a bridge, and then they see what looks like English Christian knights just standing there like that, and they try running away from them, but Ian and Barbara then find them. But then Harvey Weinstein then throws the rope for the bridge down, and is like, "Hi, I'm never gonna get out now," and buggers off, trapping our heroes. So with nowhere to go, they head back. They look inside the cave. They realize the knights are actually frozen. They're not moving. And in it, there's a block of ice. Behind them is a block of ice, and in that block of ice is the key to Marinus. They find these pipes, and when Barbara moves them around, the block of ice starts to melt. So they wait, and they're making a bridge to put the bridge up, and then the girls are waiting. And they see that the ice is completely melted, so they get the key, but then the knights start moving and are resurrected. There's a great shot where you see one of them get up like that, with his eyes closed, and then his eyes open, looking at Susan, and Susan starts screaming. I thought that was a really good shot of the knight. However, they looked really, the concept of these just knights that just protect, the thing, like in Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail, with that one knight to protect the Grail. I thought it was a really cool idea. However, these knights are pretty silly. When you see them running around and being easily getting caught in traps, like when Ian knocks the wall down, and they're just like, what's going on? How are we gonna do this? It comes off really silly. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the whole episode was trying to be a comedy, trying to be a tribute to the Gold Rush. Maybe in the first half would have worked a lot better, but here with these knights, they started off really mysterious, and they kind of ruined it. I used to love these knights when I first watched it. I thought it was a really cool idea, but then it did. Watching it now, I've realised it's not as interesting as I originally thought it was. These knights then pass through the wall. However, our characters have made a bridge out of blocks of ice. I think it was ice, or was it wood? Couldn't have been wood, because how would they get wood in the caves? So they put the wood down, and they go past, and then Ian throws it, and you could just see the knights, and they're just like, they're really silly, and I don't know why. If they just stood there just staring, that would have been much better, I think, in my opinion. So then it cuts back to the cabin, and the guy is just like looking at the watches, and he's like, like, it's all mine, basically. And then suddenly there's a knock at the door and smash. Ian comes in, he's like, we want our things back. Okay, maybe didn't say it that extreme, but you get my gist. And they get the watches, and you can hear it bang on the door, doof, 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 doof. And the guy is like trying to block the door, and he's like, you're not going to leave me, and he grabs Susan. But Susan's like very quiet, and he's just looking at Ian as if to be like, I don't know, the way that Carole Ford played that bit is very, very well handled. I like the way that she's like, you know, something, we got a plan. Oh, Carole Ford in this one, I don't know if it was, I think it was Susan being written poorly throughout most of this and last episode as well. She's just screams a lot, and she's gone back to her old character where she's very scared of everything. I found it very disappointing, especially how Dalek was also written by Terry Nation, and it had this story arc of her becoming a more independent, strong character. But there you go. It's television. It always resets back to the status quo. The guy is holding Susan, and then suddenly he's like, ah! And he turns around and you can see that like one of the knives from the knights that have gotten through the door is just like in the wood. And then they teleport, and then you see the knights, like they come in, and you can see that like the guy's on the floor dead, and there's nobody else, and you see the knights are just being silly like this, but it's not like so bad it's good. It's just silly enough that it's just not like hilarious, but it's not good either. So there you go. There's not a lot to talk about this one. This is I think this might be even weaker than the last episode, thinking about it. Before, I used to love this episode, especially when I first watched it. When I first watched it, I just loved the atmosphere of it, and I liked the cave, the look of the cave and the look of the cavern. It has a very snowy, claustrophobic feel to it. And the whole idea of the knights being like guardians to the key, and then they wake up when the key is taken. I thought that was really cool. But now looking back, I don't think it holds up as well. So there you go. That's part 4. I think we're on. Yeah. So now we're on to part 5, the trial episode, where at the end of this episode, which is the cliffhanger, Ian sees a room and he sees a guy knocked down on the floor, and he sees the key in like a cabinet. But suddenly somebody off camera knocks him in the back of the head, and takes like a weapon, puts it in his hand, and then goes up to the cabin, opens it, you can hear alarms going off, and he takes the key, and then he's gone. This mysterious guy is gone. So that leads into the next episode. Let's see how that looks like. So, part 5, Sentence of Death. This is a trial episode, which is revolves around a trial. Here they believe that Ian murdered a guard to take the key, but they can't find the key. They had this whole these scans and thing, and they can't find the key. It's not in the build room, and no of the people who entered it had it, and they couldn't find it on Ian. So the Ian is on trial, and the rest of the crew around him and are like, is there anybody who can defend you? And Ian's like, yes, there is this one man. And then somebody is like, who is he? And Ian's like, who? The doctor. And it's like, oh, if only I knew where he was. And then you can hear, and as best you can, or something like that. And the doctor's here. Hey, William Hartnell's back from his holiday. So yeah, William Hartnell's back in this one, and you can tell after his holiday he is full of energy. One of my favourite scenes is he takes Barbara and Susan to the crime scene, and he makes them reenact everything because he has a hunch of what happened. And the way William Hartnell moves, and he grabs Jacqueline Hill when she's doing the impression of Ian getting knocked out. He just grabs her and then kind of like, not pushes her, but like nudges her to the floor. And you can tell he's got a lot of energy. Also, it seems like this is the first time William Hartnell plays the Doctor as we know it. There's a lot of Hartnell's is in his performance here. He's like, very interesting, very interesting indeed. Which is like what we imagine the first Doctor being now. Basically, a much more caricature, but a much more lovable hero than he has been previously. What happens is that the Doctor finds out that somebody asked the guards to come with him into a safe, and somebody then found Ian on the floor and asked one of the Guardian to come in and look around, and they couldn't find the key. But the Doctor has a theory that it was this guy that took the key, because obviously he couldn't have taken it out. So what he did is he came back, realised that because Ian's in there, he can put the frame on Ian, and when he came out and saw the guard, he was like, well, it was this guy who's clearly guilty. Now, Marinus's laws imply that he is guilty until proven otherwise. So if Ian is found guilty, he would be sentenced to death. And the scene of the court, I thought, the set looks absolutely nice. The three heads, I can't remember what they were called, if they were even. They had some really silly costumes. It gets the idea that they're these that they are like the holders of the law. But they had like these really silly costumes, and I don't know, it was just really funny. So he asks Barbara and Susan to go to this guy's house. But first they meet his wife, and they're like, we need to ask him a few questions. And she's like, I don't think you need to. He's very thorough. He's been through all of the crime stuff. And Barbara's like, I know, but maybe there's some bits he left out. And then the guy comes home and he's very pissed, and he's just like, what are you doing here? Get out of my house. And then Barbara or Susan is like, we know where the key is. The guy then just turns around and is like, you can't know where the key is. Yes, you know where the key is because Ian told you. And it's like, it was so obvious that he was guilty, which I found really surprising. Normally in like courtroom dramas, they kind of leave like the surprise on who did it to the very end. But here, they didn't leave anything to surprise. They just kind of like told you who it was, which I think is a shame. I think the trial element here doesn't really work because there's no room to build any mystery about any of the evidence or anything. We already know who this guy is. Is the guy who's guilty of the crime, and we know Ian is clearly innocent. I mean, that's obvious to anyone, but the whole intrigue of a trial is that we don't know how they're going to get out it. But here it's clear, because the guy clearly just gives himself away. But the Doctor's way of finding out is really very clever. What he does is he asks the girl he befriended, the one who's been travelling with him since episode 2, and shows her a picture. He takes her to the trial and he shows a picture of the key, and he's like, do you know what this is? Yes, it's the Key of Marinus. Do you know what it is? And she's like, yes. Where is it? And she gets it out. It's like, it is here. And everyone's like, oh, what? I mean, obviously we know that they've been collecting, they've got the 4 keys and they've got a 5th one, which is a fake one. But nobody else knew that. And then the Doctor's like, who gave you that key? The person who murdered the guard. Who was it? And then she points to the guy who Ian and Barbara and Susan went to the house. Oh yeah, there's a really weird moment. I forgot to mention. Let's backtrack a bit. After Barbara and Susan go into this guy's house, he chucks her out. And then they put their ear to the door, and you can hear him arguing with his wife. And she's just like, you should have been more careful. And then you can hear a slap. And then you can hear the woman screaming. It's like, oh my God, that woman's in an abusive relationship. It's like, what? I mean, this is a kid's show from the 1960s. Why is it so dark all of a sudden? But yeah, like I said, there's not a lot to talk about in this one. I think because I think the trial bits are pretty weak. So they grab the guy, and the guy says, "Okay, I'll tell you everything. I wasn't alone. I was working," and he gets shot by something. You can see like there's a light around him, and he collapses. And then you think that would be it, but then they have a little chat, and then the trial starts up again, and they're like, the guy was clearly working with someone else, and the doctor hasn't brought any new evidence. Therefore, Ian is still, at this moment, guilty until proven otherwise. And the doctor asks, can he have more time to provide new evidence? And they're like, no, you can't deny the inedible. You either say something new now, or Ian is dead. And then that's our cliffhanger. That's a pretty good cliffhanger, I think. Sadly, it was made obvious who it was. In an earlier scene, the guy is on the phone to this other guy, and who is the prosecutor, not the guy talking, but one of the guys against Ian in the trial, and he's just like, don't tell him anything, blah 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 blah. So the trial, like I said, the trial aspect doesn't really work here, but I thought it was pretty well handled as a basic story. It's a lot of fun. William Hartnell probably has one of his best performances here. The rest of the cast may be a bit sidelined. They don't get a lot of acting to do, but William Hartnell is good. And to see him in a trial set, and you see him stand in front of everyone else and demand shouting, really puts the Doctor in a power situation, which is very cool to see. So it's a lot. It's here. I think this is William Hartnell's most modern interpretation so far. So there you go. That's episode 5. Now we get on to the last episode, which I also believe is also called the Key of Marinus. Let me look this up. Yeah, the last episode is also called the Keys of Marinus. So I'll see you on the last episode. And so there it is, the final episode, the Key of Marinus. Now that was... I know, I wish I had a bit more to talk about. But anyway, this episode is split into 2 elements. One is to resolve the cliffhanger of the first one, and of the episode before, I mean. So this is like a half bit sequel to the trial episode. And then the final bit is all bits back on the little island in the first episode, and we'll talk about the Voords. So we get to see the Voords again, hooray. But anyway, back to the trial. So Barbara gets a phone call. One of the guards gives her a phone saying, "It's for you." And Barbara hears Susan's voice and is like, "They're gonna kill me." Blah, 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 blah. So anyway, so Barbara and the 2 new characters, they go to the guy who's been murdered's wife, because they suspect that if he was working with someone, she would know. And they talk to her, and it's like, maybe he knew about that one of our friends was kidnapped. And then she's like, "Sorry, I didn't mean, I know it's a bit stressful when you heard her on the phone, but I would like to, but I know nothing, honestly, I'm sorry." So they leave, and there's a great bit where you see them, the guards putting all the evidence away, and you just see this doctor just sitting there on a bench outside the trial room, just in silence, just looking in the distance, not even blinking, just completely still. You can see that this whole situation has gotten distorted, and one of the guards comes up to him and he's like, "I don't care, I still need to find evidence." So he's very still determined. I like how the Doctor's so determined for Ian and Barbara this time around. So Barbara, anyway, they walk off, and then Barbara's like, "Hold on, we didn't tell her about the phone call." we just told her that the Barbara and that Susan was kidnapped. But we didn't say anything about phone calls. So how did she know unless she was there? So they expect that she was the one. And then it cuts back to the wife and she opens the door and Susan's there. And then she's got a mouth model. It's like, your friend just can't save you now. The woman who plays this woman does a very good villain role. So then you can see Barbara in the background and she caps her and there you go. And you think, right, that's sorted. They've got her. She's going to confess and it's all going to be sorted, right? But however, she confesses that, yes, her husband did get help. She got help from Ian. So Ian is definitely going to be put on to death row. And you can see a clock coming down and then it's like when it hits the top, they're going to murder Ian. However, the doctor realizes that the guy has to come back and they can the actual guy has to come back to get the key, wherever it is. So they set a trap for him. And then it cuts to outside the trial room in the dark, and you see a guy in a hooded figure. Like I said, trial elements here are not very well handled because we already know who the guy is. It was the guy who was opposite Ian in the trial. So there's no mystery here, and he goes into the cabinet where they put all the evidence, and he gets the weapon that was used to knock Ian out. And then you see all the guards jump on him out of nowhere, and the doctor comes out and he pulls the mask off. And it's, who ought to expect? It's the guy. So they take him, Ian is freed, and they realise that in the maze, and they open it up and there's the new key. And the doctor gets permission from these people that they can take the key to bring back to the consciousness. So that ends that little story. I find it really awkward that this one is like half, this episode is half solving that one, and then half of it to resolution the whole story arc. I think they should either have made this episode continue on to the trial to the end, and then leave another episode to finishing up with the Voord, or they should have finished the whole trial thing in the first episode. However, I don't think the trial episodes were very well handled. So they were fun. It was fun, especially seeing William Hartnell take on the defendant. It was very, very, very fun, but I don't think story-wise it worked very well. But there you go. So we get back to the island. Now, before they travel, the doctor is laughing with the guards, and they use the dials first. Now these guys don't seem to realise that about teleportation is a form of travel, which means that monk guy must be really sophisticated technology-wise, because it doesn't seem like it's a normal thing on this planet. So I just thought that was quite interesting. So they go off because they can show thing, and the doctor's like, okay, and then he travels on later. And it cuts to the guy that they were traveling with, and he's being kidnapped by the Voord. Now, for some reason, the one that killed the monk is now wearing his clothes. And I just burst out with laughter because these characters were taken very seriously. They don't say anything. They come slowly up with the knives and they come and try and stab you. In the first episode, and they were very well handled, I thought. But then here, for some reason, they're really silly and stupid. One of them starts wearing the monk's clothes, and they all speak. They all talk, and they speak with the mash. So they're all like this, and they shout all the time, and they're like, you will do this, and you will do that. And it becomes really, and all that menacing presence that you had in episode 1 is completely gone. What happens then is Ian and Susan, who don't realise that the monk is dead, go to the room. Now the Voords take the guy and the girl prisoner somewhere. Ian, Barbara and Susan and the doctor weren't involved. So the Doctor gives Ian a key and says give it to the monk, and then Ian goes to find the monk. Now the Voord kind of puts the hood on and is like, you cannot look at my face, but it's so clearly not the monk, and he says that that he doesn't trust that guy who's with that woman, who turns out to be his daughter, the monk's daughter. And Ian is like, I don't know, you've got to make that decision for yourself. And then he gets the key and gives it to him, thinking he's the monk. So then the monk asks for the Doctor, and then he goes to find the Doctor. And then later on, the Voord's got the key, and he's like, finally, I have all the power. Again, really silly, really stupid. All that medicine is gone. Hey. So they go back, and the Doctor, they kind of put together that this isn't the monk. The way he was talking was very not the monk, as we've seen in part 1. And then the Doctor's like, why did you give him the key? And then he's like, did I? And he picks out a key, or one of the keys out of his pocket. And he explains that he gave the fake key that they found in episode 3 to the Voord leader, and then they go and save the guy and the girl, and the guy is like, oh no, if he puts the false key in, the whole building's going to explode. So they run off. It cuts to the Voord. You see him put the key in. He goes, bleh! And then it just cuts to the Doctor and everybody just safe outside the TARDIS. So all that build-up, all that menace, all the whole Voord being this big threat that has to be taken, these keys from across the planet. There you go. That was all that build-up for that. I hope you enjoyed. That was the Key of Marinus. Let's talk about the last episode first. The last episode I thought was maybe the weakest because like I said, the two elements were split up. So now instead of another story with half an hour of plot, we have one 15-minute resolution to the last story and then one 15-minute resolution to the entire 6-part story. I mean, that is pretty ridiculous for any story, okay? So overall, it wasn't well written. It's all over the place. A lot of people really don't like this one. You'll find on the internet. And I think it is perfectly justified. It does have a lot of problems. Especially episode 3 onwards. However, I think the first 2 episodes do have a lot to work with. Episode 1 may have some really stupid moments, unintentionally funny, but it works. And episode 2, as I've explained, is bloody fantastic, in my opinion. However, parts 3 onwards have a lot of problems. They're kind of boring at some places, and structurally they don't really work. However, I think what this story is, it's fun. I can see myself in watching this a few times on its fun value. There's a lot of chemistry between all the actors, and each actor gets a time to shine. It's not like it's like a story centered on one character like it has been for these past few episodes. This, I think, you do get the ensemble cast in this story. So that's Keys of Marinus. I hope you enjoyed. I'm really sorry this took so long. I really wanted to talk about this one. I thought it has a very interesting concept, and I just wanted to get my opinions out of there. So that's the Keys of Marinus. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time when we go back to some Big Finish audio dramas, but somehow things are a bit lost. What do I mean? I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. See you next time.